Hello everyone and welcome, I'm back and today I'm going to be reviewing Season 10A of The Walking Dead. As always is the norm with all my videos, I won't be holding back on any spoilers, so please do keep that in mind. Before we start, I just want to say sorry about the noise to the right of me. That is a heater that's keeping me alive and warm because I'm in a garage and it's bloody freezing and I don't want to freeze to death. So apologies, but it's just going to have to stay on and you'll just have to put up with it, and there's not a lot I can do about it at the moment. So sorry. Let's start the video. So I am very happy to say that The Walking Dead Season 10A is pretty damn good and keeps up with the improvements made to the show during Season 9. I will say that I was kind of surprised by how slow things have moved this half of the season. I mean, compared to Season 9, which moved ridiculously fast, and that's not a criticism, it just did move very fast because there was a lot of story that Kane wanted to tell. You know, this has been really slow compared to that, but it works and it shows that with the sort of right script, and as long as the characters and the show itself are interesting, you don't always have to move at 100 miles an hour, and that's part of the problem I had with the show in Season 6 to 8, in that it was so incredibly slow when it didn't really have a reason to be. But now it kind of feels like it's the right decision to slow things down after that climax in 9:15 when, you know, everyone died, and it's a bit of a time to reflect on that before what will, I guess, will be the inevitable war with Alpha during the next half of the season. And yeah, it works. Remarkably, despite the season's slower pacing, there seems to be very little filler in this season so far. I'll admit I was a bit worried when I watched episode 2 and it was immediately apparent that it was going to be a backstory about Alpha and Beta, and I was kind of thinking, oh god, a backstory, like a flashback episode in the second episode of the season, do we really need this? But my worries were sort of put to ease because it nicely links to the present, and their stories and how they met were actually quite interesting. And I think that this episode is really good watched with the premiere back to back, because they both end in exactly the same place with Alpha and Carol looking at each other, and it's kind of a story about how they both got there. And I kind of think that AMC should have really aired these two back to back. I mean, I don't know what the reaction was to episode 2 at the time because I've binged through it, or I didn't watch it when it originally aired because I've had so much going on. But I don't know, I imagine there were some people who watched the first episode, were sort of a bit hyped for what was to come, and then watched this episode 2, where things didn't really move forward and it ended in the same place as episode 1, and maybe they thought, oh, great, I've had to wait a week for that. And, you know, that's why sometimes when you are able to binge through a show, sometimes the pacing issues, even if it is a bit slower, can not be as much of an issue. So be aware of that whilst I'm doing this review, that maybe my opinion might be skewed somewhat because I binged through it in like 2 days, and maybe if I'd watched this show over 8 weeks it might have been the same, it might have not, I don't know, but I'll just let you know that now before we carry on. Season 10A feels very focused in what it sets out to achieve. The Walking Dead has had the luxury of trimming the fat this season and last season with the removal of a couple of communities, meaning now that we only have sort of Hilltop, Alexandria, Oceanside, and then obviously you've got the Whisperers in the Woods left to deal with. So in doing so, it means that there's less places to focus on, and it means that there can be more time spent with all the characters mixing together than in previous seasons. Because if you look at sort of Season 6 to 8, we sort of had five communities, five communities, and you sometimes would have entire episodes set in one community. So you might have, I don't know, an episode about Morgan and Carol at the Kingdom, and how they met people at the Kingdom and them being introduced to it, and that would be the entire episode, and you literally would not see anyone else until next week, which is fine if you like those characters. But if you don't, if you just watch the show because you want to see Rick, well, you're screwed, and you're screwed now because Rick's not in it. But the point I'm trying to make is that previously The Walking Dead was very much, it wasn't very fluid in how its characters moved around and interacted with one another. If they were in a place, they were usually stuck there for ages, and sometimes the show wouldn't even go to more than one location during an episode. But this season, even though, you know, we've got characters, Ezekiel here, we've got Carol at this place, whatever, they all sort of interact and overlap with one another, and the show moves to different locations throughout each episode, which is what you want really, because no one wants to sit around for 45 minutes watching characters in one place if the characters there are people that they don't give a shit about. I mean, it's okay to do it in one-offs, but previously The Walking Dead did that so often, and it was really irritating to think that you're going to watch the show and you think, great, you know, I've got to go through every location, the Sanctuary, the Kingdom, Hilltop, Alexandria, Oceanside, and you think, oh, it might be 5 weeks now until they go back to Alexandria and I see the people I actually care about. So it's really improved in that sense. And I admit there were some times when you had sort of characters from one location meeting up with characters from another location in the same episode, and you kind of think, hang on, how the hell did he get there so quickly? But to be honest, I don't care. I'll let that slide if it means that characters can meet up more and talk to each other more, because that's what I want to see. I don't want to see everyone separated and no one talking to each other, because that's the issues, that was the main problems with previous seasons, and that everyone was apart, and you didn't have the main characters like Daryl and Carol getting to spend much time together, characters who are good together, and it sort of let the show down. So yeah, that's really a lot better this season. So anyway, it's time to talk about the actual characters themselves this season, and it seems as if much of the protagonists this season are damaged and traumatised from the sort of heads on pikes incidents. Is it pikes or spikes? I always get them confused. What's what? I'd have to look it up later. Anyway, heads on pikes, we're going to say pikes, incident from last season, and it's about these characters dealing with the trauma from it and the trauma from various other shit that's happened to them since the post-apocalypse. And yeah, it's sort of a look at how our characters deal with it and how they move on, really, or try to at least. Now, having the characters on The Walking Dead being depressed and at rock bottom isn't exactly anything new. I mean, the show isn't exactly sunshine and rainbows, but I do think that the way it's handled this season, and especially the darker themes this season, are handled in a much mature and interesting way than they have done in seasons previous. I mean, let's use Carol as an example. So prior to season 7, Carol's character underwent a huge transformation since the start of the show, where she went from this beaten, meek housewife to basically a badass post-apocalyptic warrior, and she became a fan favourite because of that. Yet in season 7, Carol suddenly got depressed and hated killing people and was writing it down in a little notebook, everyone she killed for some bizarre reason, but Scott Gimple, that's what he does. And she basically secluded herself and just ended up in a house on her own for most of the season at the Kingdom. I don't necessarily have an issue with The Walking Dead making Carol depressed in season 7, because if anyone has a reason to be depressed, it's her. She's had enough shit happen to her in the show, and she also had a pretty shit life prior to it when she was living with an abusive husband. So yeah, it would make sense that all of it caught up with her, but ultimately The Walking Dead is still entertainment, and watching someone mope around in a home being miserable isn't really interesting to watch. Now, I know some of you will be saying, well, Josh, that's the point. She's fucking depressed, you idiot. Of course she's not going to be interesting to watch. Okay, and I get that, and maybe in me feeling depressed because I'm watching someone depressed, maybe that's kind of Scott Gimple's genius in breaking the fourth wall, in making a viewer depressed, like some kind of weird piece of postmodern art. I don't know what I'm talking about, but anyway, maybe there is a reason to that, and maybe there's a reason behind that, but still, it's still kind of dull. Yeah, I don't know, I just felt that the way they handled it then, I didn't like what they did to her character. But the very long, stretched out point that I'm trying to make is that Carol's character is, again, suffering badly in season 10, and I mean, yeah, really badly. She's having visions of all the dead children that were lost in her care, and she has them all in this little book. She sees the faces replaced with their heads, and she sees Henry's decapitated head in the mirror calling out to her, and she's not sleeping. She's taking these tablets, which I assume are to keep her awake. It's not really sure, but I think they're kind of like energy pills, or I don't know if they are some kind of recreational drug, I don't know, but it seems like she takes them because she doesn't want to sleep and have these nightmares of Henry and everyone else who's died, but lack of sleep can also fuck you up massively, so she has even more problems. And there's one scene, and I can't remember which episode exactly, where she has a conversation with Daryl, and Daryl talks about his dad being a truck driver, or she makes some kind of comment that, he's not something about Daryl's dad, derogatory towards Daryl's dad because he's a truck driver. And then later in the episode, the two meet again, and she mentions it, and Daryl sort of says, no, my dad wasn't a truck driver. So, in fact, you find out the whole conversation didn't even take place. It was all in Carol's head. And I was really drawn into that, because that conversation that they had, which was actually a hallucination, didn't really seem like there was anything out of the ordinary. I thought it was an actual conversation, and if I, the viewer, can't distinguish that between an hallucination, if I can't distinguish what's real and what isn't, then how the hell has Carol got any chance? So that really, for me, that kind of put me in her position, and I thought, wow, shit, this is messed up. Carol's really having a hard time if she's imagining conversations like that, which to me looked like a real conversation. So yeah, I thought the way in which it was handled in this season was much better and much interesting than just having her be miserable in season 7. And I guess, but again, you could say that perhaps she's going through different emotions now than she was then, so which is why then she was a different kind of depressed and traumatized to what she is now. You know, fine, that's fine. There's arguments to say that what happened in season 7 that was right, whatever. But for me, it didn't work, and for me, I felt that the angle they took to her this season with her dealing with it was a hell of a lot better and interesting to watch, and it was actually quite creepy at times. And some of The Walking Dead's best moments this season came from these traumatized characters in their visions and their hallucinations, and yeah, I really liked what they did to her character. And that sounds messed up for me saying that I liked seeing someone hallucinating dead children. I didn't like that happened to Carol. I liked watching it. Well, I didn't like watching it. I don't know. You know what I mean? Of course I can't mention Carol without then talking about her ex-boyfriend King Ezekiel, who was another character who was suffering with trauma this season. So when we first met the King back in season 7, he was this overconfident, boisterous, eccentric leader who always had a smile on his face, and the type of person who didn't seem to have a care in the world really, and someone who was always happy. But during the war with Negan, cracks began to show in this persona, and you realise that, as he said to Carol during season 7, it was all an act, and you saw that facade begin to fade. When he got with Carol, it seemed as if his confidence was restored somewhat, and he was a jolly guy again, everything was great. And then, since the death of Henry and Carol's left him, he's basically just gone to rock bottom. Ezekiel is now a broken man, and to be honest, he kind of has every reason to be. I mean, he lost Henry, he lost Carol, he lost his entire kingdom, and many of his friends died during the war, and he also has thyroid cancer in a time when cancer can't be treated to top it all off. Yeah, not the luckiest guy in the world. Now this might sound like a bit of a fucked up thing to say, but I have thought about it previously, about the concept of what if someone in The Walking Dead, you know, a character, survived everything thrown at them during the post-apocalypse, survived the zombie outbreak, the dangerous other people of the world, and seemed to sort of made it in the world and got through all the dangers, and then suddenly succumbed to a disease like cancer. I thought of this scenario previously, and Angela Kang went into my brain and stole it. Okay, she didn't do that, I'm not some kind of weird conspiracy theorist, but I have thought of that before, and the reason being is that it's very real. You know, cancer and these kind of diseases don't care about what you've overcome. They don't care if you're a nice person, they don't care if you've had a rough life and you've been through everything. It will kick you when you're down. It's the luck of the draw, basically. You can be the healthiest person in the world, the nicest person in the world, or you can be the most evil person in the world, and you can have the unhealthiest lifestyle. You might get it, you might not get it. It's luck. Of course you can do things to prevent that, but yeah, basically, if you're unlucky, and you get these kind of diseases. And I think the fact that here we have Ezekiel, who I'm sure most of us would say is a nice guy, he's been through enough shit as it is, he certainly doesn't deserve cancer, gets cancer. It's real, and it hits deep, because we've all probably lost someone through cancer who you wouldn't have ever dreamed that they deserved it. Well, you can argue that no one deserves it, but that's another thing altogether. Basically, yeah, it's kind of really dark that a guy who has been through such tough times gets it, but it's true to real life. People do get stuff. People who are nice and the nicest people in the world, sometimes shit things happen to them. So I think it was actually a really brave decision to do this to Ezekiel's character. It's hard to watch, but certainly it was a brave choice by Kang and the writers to give him, you know, what is essentially a death sentence. And poor Ezekiel even contemplated suicide in episode 4, and you can see that I wasn't lying when I said there's some really dark themes in this season. The thing I liked about this, again, that sounds weird to say you liked this when you're watching someone nearly jump off from a great height. But anyway, the thing I liked about this was that when Ezekiel met with Michonne, she was the one who talked him down, and he basically said that he rode out not knowing that he was going to do it. He just rode out, and then he found himself there. And again, like the whole situation with the cancer, that can sometimes happen. There are people, of course, plan their suicide, their death rages, but some people you wouldn't even know. They just go out and then something tells them to do it and they do it. So that's another thing that I thought this is kind of real in a way, and it kind of hit close to home. And yeah, again, this is all rather depressing stuff to talk about, but I felt that the depressing themes this season were handled really maturely, in an adult way that I can appreciate. The last character I want to talk about who had real trauma this season was Siddiq, and I've not really had anything against Siddiq since he came on the show, but he's always just been a sort of a side character. He's just Siddiq, he's just another doctor. He's basically another character who belongs with the likes of Rosita and Gabe, and yeah, he's just there. He's never been that interesting, but for me this season, he's the star of the half of the season. This season, he's the star of the half of the season. You know what I mean? He's the star of season 10A, which was a real surprise to me, really, and yeah, I think his actor did a really good job. Siddiq basically has the double whammy of having to deal with the trauma of seeing his friend sliced to pieces in front of him by Alpha, as well as also having to deal with survivor's guilt because she picked him to be the one to survive and send the message to everyone else. So he has to deal with the fact that his friend died, and he also has to deal with the fact that, you know, Alpha picked him, and I'm sure a male adult in that position would say, why did I live and Henry, a kid, didn't live, or why didn't Enid live? And you would feel guilty for that. So yeah, there's a lot going on with Siddiq, which is why then I felt like a complete arsehole when, before the end of the season, I turned on him and thought he was a traitor, and I feel really bad for that. Siddiq, I'm sorry, man. So I'm sure that some of you are aware of the theories that were going around last season when Siddiq survived, saying that Siddiq worked with Alpha and he helped her round up the people and he's in on it and blah blah blah. And I know that I think some of you actually suggested it yourself in the comments, and no disrespect, but I saw these theories and I thought it was complete bollocks at the time, because I thought, why would he help her? What does he have to gain from killing his friends? Why would he do that? He didn't strike me as someone who was ever evil. He was just a genuine guy as far as I'm concerned, so I never really understood where those theories come from. I guess it does make sense as he's the only person who survived, but yeah, I sort of just ignored them and just thought, nah, this is rubbish, I don't believe this at all. But as his sort of actions and behaviours this season got more and more erratic, I did start to buy into this. I mean, there's a point where a whisperer is captured at Alexandria, and he says to Ezekiel, to Siddiq, that he recognises him, and Siddiq sort of rushes off in a panic, and you start to think, oh, is this guy calling him out because he knows Siddiq is a whisperer and he knows he's working for him? And then you have the bit where the dude, that same guy, the whisperer, is killed, and Dante, the doctor, then says that, oh, Siddiq, you're the one who put the tablets in there to give to him, so you think Siddiq might have sabotaged it so he didn't reveal who he really was. And yeah, more and more stuff that just happened to the point where I just thought, yeah, this Siddiq's done something. And I think a big reason why I thought that as well is I kind of got to the feeling that why would The Walking Dead focus so much time on Siddiq, who is a non-character, if there wasn't going to be some kind of big reveal? So I thought, it's got to be him. He has to have done something. By the end of it, I was convinced that he was in with the Whisperers, or he had done something. So then when it's revealed that it's actually Dante, who is a Whisperer, who then kills Siddiq, boy, did I feel like a absolute prick, because I was basically giving this guy a hard time and accusing him of stuff when he was innocent, and he was dealing with the death of his friends and dealing with the fact that he survived and looking after a kid as well on top of all this. So yeah, man, that made me feel like shit. And also, a side note, the scene in which he sort of reanimates and goes for Rosita and the baby, that is creepy. Now, of course, you know that The Walking Dead isn't going to have someone eat a baby, because the internet would go absolutely mad, and yeah, it just wouldn't be good for the show because it would get such bad press. But anyway, so even though you knew it realistically wasn't going to happen, it was still really hard to watch a screaming baby there being threatened by, well, it's zombified dad and about to eat Rosita as well, and you seeing Rosita having to deal with realising that Siddiq's dead, but then having to put him down immediately to save her child. So yeah, that was a bloody freaky scene, and one of the most scariest in recent seasons, I'd say. But anyway, so Dr. Dante. I like this reveal, but it would have been better, I felt, if Dante was introduced earlier. So if Dante was introduced last season as a new doctor, and we got to know him a bit more, and then it was revealed that, oh no, Dante, the nice doctor, is a whisperer, that would have been shocking. As it was, you don't even know this guy was. He turned up in the first episode, and I initially thought, is this a side character who I've forgotten about? When did this guy come into the show? But no, he's just a new character who's just appeared. So yeah, it didn't quite have the same effect as if he was a long-term character who was then revealed to be a Whisperer. Also, if I'm being honest, even though I didn't call him out as a traitor, I did always kind of feel something was off with his character. I mean, immediately from when I saw him, to me, he was very irritating. He was always talking about how he's a god, and we're the gods, and God, I'm so beautiful, and he just loved himself. And yeah, he was so annoying, especially when you see him like with the with the elderly female patients, like as treating some 70-year-old, and he's like, "Hey, you want a piece of me, baby?" And I'm like, what are you doing, man? She's like 70 years old, what's wrong with you? I mean, each to their own. If you like women that age, you know, go for it. But it's just creepy, man. Like, what were you doing? So yeah, I always thought he was a bit of a creep and a bit of a weirdo, to be honest. So perhaps if I had liked him more, then again, it would have hit me harder. I get that he was playing up to an act to try and blend in with people, and obviously I expect that's not the way he really is, because the Whisperers aren't like that, because he was kind of like a worse version of Negan. And the Whisperers are very reserved and not like that. So perhaps he was putting something on and being very over the top on purpose, but he just came off as a dick to me. And I think if he was introduced earlier, if he was more likeable, it would have hit me harder and been even more shocking. As it stands, it's still a pretty decent reveal. I didn't see it coming, but they could have handled it better. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but yeah, it could have been done better. As it was still decent enough though. Negan was another character who I think had a very good half a season, and I've kind of got to the point with Negan where I kind of feel similar to how I felt about Dwight in Season 8, in that, in my mind, Negan has done more than enough to redeem himself, and I like him. I mean, he's still a bit of a douche, but I like him, yet everyone else on the show hates him. And that's kind of what I felt with Dwight, in that Dwight was doing everything he could to assist with the war effort. He was even turning and killing his own people, putting his life on the line, yet we still had Tara and Daryl drag him out in the woods saying they were going to kill him, which just seemed a bit weird. So it's kind of at that point with Negan, because as a viewer, I see all this good stuff he does, yet everyone else still hates him and treats him like shit. I mean, this season alone, he saves Aaron when Aaron gets that weird weed, what is it, some kind of weed grass in his eye that makes him go blind, and he protects him all night. He saves Lydia, and I mean, okay, yeah, he killed the woman who was attacking Lydia, but she was a dick, and like he said, I don't think she's going to be missed. Doesn't make it right, I know, but she was attacking a girl, and he saved her, so in my eyes, he's okay by me. And you have the other episode 5, I believe, when that weird guy who like idolizes Negan kills the mother and the son, because he thinks it's like a test, and Negan goes absolutely mad and kills him. And you even see before that how kind Negan is to the mum and the son, and I get why the characters can't forgive him, because when you see a guy bash your bloody friend's brains in front of you, I don't think, if it were me in that situation, I'd ever forgive them no matter how nice they were. But it still was a bit jarring as a viewer to be sort of, especially last season as well, when you saw his relationship with Judith, and we constantly had it pushing us how nice Negan is, or how he sort of turned over a new leaf and isn't as evil as we thought he was, yet everyone in the show still absolutely hates him. And yeah, I thought it was a bit bizarre, a bit bizarre, I guess, when after he killed the lady who attacked Lydia, you had the council deciding what to do with him, and then Aaron sort of saying, yeah, we know, we might have to kill him. And I was just thinking, like, he literally saved you like an episode or two ago. I mean, I know that he's killed Aaron's friends and stuff, but you kind of just think, like, come on, are you really considering killing a guy who saved you? Really? Also, on the topic of Negan, I have to say that Negan had probably the best comedy moments for me in the season so far. There was a moment when Aaron trips him and he sort of gets up and says, "What are you, 12? Did you really just trip me?" And he says it in such a way that he's genuinely disgusted that Aaron tripped him. And I just found it hilarious. Like, he was so pissed off and so annoyed that Aaron tripped him, and he saw it as such a childish thing to do. And yeah, I just found that really funny. There's also a bit where he's with the kid that he saves with the mum, who I mentioned just a moment ago, and he starts talking about this kid about nut tapping, and I was kind of like, what the hell is nut tapping? And then obviously it clocked on after. It's basically a game, it looks like the guy's playing, where you go and whack someone in the nuts. I mean, yeah, alright, whatever you're into, I guess, but I thought it was funny, and it was quite nice seeing how good he was with the kids as well. Well, with the kids, sorry. And we know that Negan's good with children, and that it doesn't matter, I don't think, if you're a guy or a girl, when you see a guy he's good with kids, it always makes you think that they are kind of nice. So he had some of the best comedic moments for me in the season. And on the whole, I felt that throughout this half a season, the humour was actually pretty well done. In previous seasons of The Walking Dead, to put it bluntly, I think that the humour has been pretty dire. There's a few things that still make me laugh, but for much of, most of the jokes that come up are just childish and not my sense of humour personally, but I felt that the humour this season was very much on point and all the jokes got me laughing. I mean, there was one bit where Eugene is trying to catch a sneaky glimpse of Rosita's tits as she's breastfeeding her child, and yeah, okay, that's pretty disgusting, but it is in keeping with Eugene's pervy character in previous seasons, because we've seen him sort of spying on Rosita having sex with Abe before, so it's something that he would do, and it was actually quite funny that he had the audacity to try and do that. There's also a moment as well when he makes an obscure reference when he's in the library, I think, with Luke, and Luke sort of hits back and says, oh, blah, 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 and sort of he doesn't say blah, 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 he actually says something, but he references what Eugene said, and Eugene just sort of stands there and he's like, fuck, this guy actually knows what I'm talking about, and he's like, he's so shocked that someone actually gets his reference, and he was shocked to the point where he didn't even say anything, and that just made me laugh, because it was kind of like, so you finally got someone who knows what you're talking about, but you're not going to say anything to him. Genius. But yeah, for me the humour worked very well this season compared to previous. And I just mentioned Luke. On the subject of Luke, this guy must not be getting enough food in whatever camp he's in, because the dude has lost a lot of weight from last season. I couldn't help but notice that. I mean, good on the guy who plays him and all, but yeah, I just kind of saw him and I was like, whoa, this guy has lost a lot of weight. But yeah, good for him, I guess. But yeah, just a bit weird to come from last season Luke to this season Luke. So before I talk about the Whisperers and the other antagonists this season, I want to quickly cover some of the other characters which I haven't looked at in a bit less detail. So first up is Daryl, and I'm pleased to say that once again Daryl's character remains as good as it was last season. He talks again, he doesn't grunt like he did under Gimple, he's interesting. You can tell that, despite his rough exterior, he's a nice man. My God, that's so cliche, but it's true. Like, despite the fact he comes off as this rough hillbilly type of guy, he is really kind, and that is seen in his kind of sweet scenes he has with Carol when he says that she's his best friend and she sort of takes the mick out of him for it. It's also cute when he's with Connie and you can see him really trying to talk to her and write stuff down, and yeah, it's basically the Daryl of old that we knew before the whole Negan saga, and that's what I want to watch. That's what you want in a main character. You want someone who's likeable, not someone who just goes around going because, well, you might as well have the main character be a walker if that's the case. But one thing I will say is that I think the show might be heading towards a romance with him and Carol, because there's a moment when him and Carol are talking and Carol notices that Connie likes him, and it is obvious that she does this season, and he sort of just says, oh no, and shrugs it off and says he's not interested, and she says why, and he doesn't say anything, and I think the reason might be because he likes Carol but he's too scared to say it. And I know if that happens, that will make a lot of people happy. Personally, I mean, I don't know, I guess it will work, but I actually think that Connie's probably better suited for him, and I think they're better together than him and Carol. I mean, him and Carol have been friends for so long, I just think it would be a bit weird. I think it's gone past that point of romance now, but who knows, we'll see what happens. Probably not the best person to give romance advice at the moment. Michonne and Judith were a bit disappointing, really. I mean, they didn't really do an awful lot. I think Michonne was in the opening couple of episodes, or the opening episode, and a couple more, and then she just goes on a run with the legend Scott, who's still going. I mean, this guy, he's going to be the last man standing at this point. He is an absolute legend. Yeah, it just doesn't really do much. Well, nearly killed the light, and I don't know whether that's because she's got a lot of other filming stuff going on at the time, or just because the story decided to take a focus on the likes of Siddiq and Carol instead, so maybe she'll get more time next season, next half a season, because it ends with her going away to an island, so I guess we'll see more of her then. But it was a bit disappointing, and it was also a bit disappointing from Judith's point of view, because I really liked Judith last season. Her relationship with Negan was one of the best parts of it, and she's barely even in it. But they're still good characters, they just didn't get enough screen time. Magna and Yumiko had a bit of a weird season, to be honest. Again, it's kind of like the situation with Michonne and Judith. I don't dislike their characters, but I don't like what the show did with them, really. There's a few moments when Magna says to Yumiko, oh, you're not my lawyer anymore, you can't boss me around, which is obviously referencing their past and how they got together, and it's just not that interesting. Like, okay, you know, I don't really care about their lovers' tiff or their pasts, how the two got together and how she thinks Yumiko bosses her around and tells her what to do, because to be honest, isn't really that interesting. Like, okay, they're in a relationship, they have problems, who cares? Don't really get it, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, if you remove this little side plot about them two having a lover's tiff, it would not have changed the season at all for me. It doesn't need to be in there, so that's just how I felt about it. I just kind of felt it was a bit unnecessary and didn't really add anything to the show. Next up is Aaron, who I think is becoming one of the better characters still left on the show, and that's not just because he has a cool metal arm, although obviously that does kind of help. Aaron starts out the season as kind of a pissed off dude who says, oh, I'm tired of being nice, and tries to keep up this tough guy persona, which is when we see him sort of trip over Negan and not take any shit. But Negan even says to him, I see a guy who's faking it, you're not this bad guy. Because when we saw Aaron, he was, well, when we first met him, he recruited Rick and he was going out his way to help people, build up Alexandria. Yeah, okay, he says, you know, being nice and they've got me anywhere, but ultimately this is a guy who's, from what we've seen previously, spent all his time going out his way to help people, and ultimately that is his nature. So it seems like he kind of goes back to being a nice guy when he talks to Gamma, and even though he knows that she's just trying to get intel out of him, he still tries to treat her with kindness. And you could argue and say, well, that's because he's trying to get something out of it, but I don't know. I think that he is just going back to how he was when he used to recruit people at Alexandria, and he is a nice guy, but he also, I think, is a guy who can take care of himself when the situation needs be, and yeah, he's one of the decent characters left on the show, so please don't kill him off. I think Gamma was a good addition to the cast, and it'll be interesting to see how she reacts in the second half of the season, especially now as she's realised that Lydia is alive, and that Alpha has been lying, and that she basically, her sister died for nothing, and she's given up her, was it a niece or a nephew, so I want to see what happens with her next season. Another character who disappointed me this season, I have to say, was Lydia, which is a shame because I really liked her last year, and I do still like her as a character, but she kind of got the curse of the petulant teen child thing that happens in The Walking Dead, where the child and teenagers do annoying stuff which gets other people in trouble, and it happened to her because Carol takes her to the borders to meet with Gamma, to show Gamma that Lydia is still alive, and then Lydia basically kicks off and says, you're as bad as my mum, and runs off. And I get why she's pissed, because Carol, yes, Carol did use her, but just seeing her say to Carol, you're as bad as my mum, or you're no different from my mum, and then run off into the Whisper territory, I was like, are you serious? She's nothing like your mum. Like, this is ridiculous. Why, you know, what's going on? Okay, I get it. Teens are emotional, and it can happen, but yeah, I kind of just felt, really? Lydia's not that dumb. Surely Lydia is not that dumb. Like, come on. It was annoying, and it's one of those things that happens in The Walking Dead when like what they do a lot of the time with the kid actors and teen actors is they have them do stuff just to progress the story, and sometimes it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and yeah, I felt a bit disappointed in her, really. So hopefully she gets better in the second half of the season, but yeah, she's been a bit of a letdown, excuse me, compared to last year. So that's it with the good guys, or goodish guys, because I know Negan was in there. Let me know if there's any of the protagonists that I haven't covered that you want to speak about. I know I didn't really say anything about Gabe and Rosita because, well, there's not really a lot that I want to say about them. There's not really anything to say personally, and I know there's some characters I've only really touched upon, but if you've got anything else you want to ask me about any of them, or anything you think I might have missed, or just ask me in the comments below. So before I finish the video, let's talk about the Whisperers. So first up is the big bad Alpha, and she spends a lot of time this season trying to break down the morale of the protagonists, and we see in episode 3, we see her sending waves and waves after walkers to the gates. I think, is it Alexandria, is it Hilltop, is it both? I can't be entirely sure, but anyway, yeah, they just get waves and waves of walkers, and I think they end up, I think it happens to be like 48 hours of constant onslaught, and you can see how tired they are and having to fight them off, and everyone's sort of on their last legs, as it were, trying to fend off these walkers. And I don't know if anyone's watched Battlestar Galactica, any of my viewers, but it reminded me of the first episode of the remake series. I think it's called 33 Minutes, if I believe. And in that show, you've got the heroes or the humans, whatever. I've not watched it in years, so excuse me, I can't remember what everyone's called. But anyway, they are flying away from the Cylons, who are this robot race, and they sort of jump to light speed, or faster than light, whatever it's called in that show, and escape. And then every 33 minutes the Cylons come along and reappear behind them, so they have to keep jumping to new positions over and over again. And it's basically the episode shows you how tired and exhausted the crew are from this never stopping threat. And for an opening episode of a series, it's amazing. I honestly, just check it out if you've not seen it. And that's what this episode really reminded me of. As I just said a moment ago, you could see how tired, exhausted everyone was, and just trying to deal with this constant threat that won't go away. And I thought it was bloody good, really enjoyable to watch. And if you're going to steal anything, steal it from the Battlestar Galactica premiere, which is a really amazing premiere of one of my favourite shows on TV, so yeah, I liked it. The clever thing about Alpha using this strategy of sending the dead to the door is that you could make an informed decision, intelligent assumption, and say, well, of course it's Alpha doing it because she's got a horde of walkers, but you can't be 100% sure, and you can't start a war if you're not 100% sure, and Daryl and Michonne know that. Of course, they probably think it's Alpha, but they can't go, right, we're going to attack the Whisperers, in case Alpha says, well, see, it wasn't me, but now you've started a war, I'm going to fucking kill you. Like, you can't do that. So Alpha's clever because she's using this tactic because she knows that they can't 100% pin the blame on her. And she also did the same at Hilltop when a felled tree collapsed and ruined their gates. And again, you could just say, or anyone could just say, well, the tree just collapsed by itself, it wasn't us. So again, it's not really something they could explicitly blame on the Whisperers. The decision to put Dante, however, in Alexandria was a bit weird because he was captured and everyone knew he was a Whisperer, so that's obviously going to come back on her. So yeah, that's a bit odd compared to the other two, which were kind of more sort of tactical and you wouldn't know it was them, to then have a guy said he's from the Whisperers. So yeah, that's kind of goes against her other two strategies, I guess, but I don't know, maybe she got the information and stuff that she needed out of there, I don't know. Anyway, the basic point that I'm trying to make is that this season we've been treated to a more sort of scheming and tactical Alpha than we might have perhaps seen previously, which was nice to watch, even if at times I did find myself rolling my eyes a bit with some of her reasoning behind some of her decisions. I mean, I think at one point she has a conversation with Beta and he says, why don't we just crush them now? Well, we've got the chance, why don't we just kill them all? And she says something like, oh, my followers need to see that this life doesn't work, and then the ones who don't want to be there, they'll come and join me. And it was basically the equivalent of Negan not kidding our characters by saying, oh, I want you to work for me, and then you all get pissed off and take me down. You know, it's kind of, again, it's a classic scenario where the villain has the upper hand but is cocky or wants something else, so then they let the heroes get the strength to build up and overthrow them. And yeah, of course you don't want Alpha to come in and just attack everyone straight away and that be the end of it, but at the same time it's been done many times, and I know having cocky, overconfident villains is a cliche in every single show. Pretty much every villain almost has the upper hand at some point and then doesn't take advantage because they get cocky and gets taken down a peg, and yeah, that always happens. But it's still, I kind of just felt like guys watching it and thinking, you know what, I agree with Beta, like, why are you wasting your time? Why do you need more people in the Whisperers, really? You're not trying to build anything, you're not trying to build a community, you're just sort of hunting in packs, and you'd think that the less people she had, the more easier it would be. I don't know, maybe she needs more people to herd the walkers. But yeah, it kind of felt like you're not really building a city or anything, so why do you necessarily want all these people to join you? I don't know, maybe it's a power, maybe she still just wants to lead everyone, but yeah, I kind of just felt like, we know where this is going, we know that she's gonna not take the chance and hit everyone when she could. So yeah, that was a bit disappointing, I guess, but like I said, the alternative is she just comes in and blows away and kills everyone, which isn't great to watch either. And it could actually be that this decision does actually have a positive effect on the narrative because it will cause more conflict between Alpha and Beta, which will be interesting to watch because these two come to blows this season. There's obviously tension between them, so I'd like to see if Beta will challenge Alpha next season, or next half of the season, sorry. And as for Beta, whilst I don't think he was on the show as much as he was last season so far, yeah, I enjoy watching him still. He's bloody scary. I think his portrayal on the TV show is a lot better than the comics. I never really understood the fascination with Beta in the comics. He didn't really do a lot, to be honest. I won't say what he did in case you read the comics, but yeah, he didn't seem that interesting to me. He didn't have a personality, in my opinion, in the comics, and here he does. And the flashback episode, I think, is really good. I always thought he was a bit odd, so at least that answers some of the questions as to why he is a bit strange, and it was interesting seeing that Alpha could tame him. And I've said interesting a lot this video, maybe I need to get a thesaurus for Christmas, but anyway, yeah, Beta is a good character. He didn't do anything special, but I still like watching him. And that's all I had to say really about Season 10A, because my penis is freezing. Not that you really wanted to know that. But anyway, one last thing. I didn't like the cliffhanger ending where they're all in some kind of like cave and surrounded by walkers, and it cuts to black, and it's like, ooh, how will they get out of this situation? And it's like, well, we know, just cover yourself in guts or something. We know how they're going to get out. We've seen them deal with walkers plenty of times, so yeah, it was really, I felt, anticlimactic, especially when compared to last season's mid-season finale, which obviously had Jesus dying, which was really shocking and one of the best endings to half a season. And then you kind of got this one where it's like, oh, they're in a cave with some walkers. How will they get out of that one? The same way they have every other time. So yeah, it ended on a sour note for me. I don't think that was probably one of the weaker episodes as well. I think the final one, but no, apart from that, very good half a season. Again, like I said, it's a lot slower. It doesn't get through things anywhere near as fast as Season 9 did, but that's not necessarily an issue because it still remains interesting and it still feels like warranted, because I've always said that 16 episodes is a lot for any show to do in a season, and there are seasons of The Walking Dead where you think this shouldn't be 16 episodes long. There's no need to stretch the story out this long, but it works. The 8 episodes here work. It's the right length. I think, gets through the right amount of story, and let's hope that the second half of the season can carry on in a similar vein. So I really enjoyed it. I apologise for not being able to review it as they aired, but as you'll know, I've had a lot of personal problems going on in my life. But yeah, hopefully now I can start to record again, and I may have to invest in a better heater or a hat or something, because I am seriously freezing my tits off now. But yeah, I want to start recording again. Obviously, when it airs again, I'll get back into that. I'll try and think if there's anything else I can write about between then. If you've got any ideas, feel free to hit them at me. Maybe even other shows again. Maybe I might try giving other shows a go and see what there is to watch. Give me any suggestions, what content you want, and I'll see if I can make them. But obviously, you know, Walking Dead will resume in February, I'm guessing. I might have to try Fear again, but god, that was painful to watch. I didn't even finish last season. And then you've got the other spin-off shows that next year as well. So yeah, watch that. And then Westworld, I need to catch up on Westworld. I've only watched the first season, so I think that's out next year, so that's come around really quick actually. Yeah, all I can say is thank you very much for your patience over the last couple of months. You know, I didn't know any of this was going to happen. It has been a tough couple of months. I don't really want to go into it too much on the channel, but yeah, now I'm back in a place where I feel like I want to write and I want to record again, and let's make it happen. Let's get the channel back up and running again. And thank you for all your support, and like I said in the recent community post, thank you for everyone who's stuck around whilst this has all been going on. And also, like I said, I'm really surprised that people still keep subscribing, so you must see something in my other content that you like, so thank you again for that. Apologies there's no gimple skits or anything today, but it's too freezing to be mucking around dressing up and whatnot. So, but anyway, I hope you found this enjoyable. If I don't make another video before Christmas, I wish you a happy Christmas. It will probably be a bit tight now. I'm putting out another video before Christmas because I haven't even done any Christmas shopping yet. Don't get paid till next Friday, so I'm going to have to go crazy buying everyone's stuff. Thank you for watching, thank you for your continued support, and until next time, take care, goodbye.